Okay. Hi, because I don't know from where you're joining us today, and thank you very much for sharing some time to be with us today. We have our fourth going to be going through today, and that is A Tale of Two Zoos. And we're going to be having a follow-up session that is going to be handled by our speaker today, that is going to be speaking about taxation and their unintended consequences. So we all know the drill. We start with watching the video for a couple of minutes, followed by that is going to be the speaker, Bwana Benson, coming up to speak and even to share nuggets with us. And of course, we know the drill. I have just pasted the link to today's attendance on the comment section. And remember, the secret code for today is taxation. So ensure that you have your pens ready, you have your minds ready, and let us watch the video and then thereafter move to Bwana Bernard's session. Thank you all for joining us today, and let's dig.
Previously on Jonathan Gullible. Excuse me, is there any trouble?
It's my husband. He's been arrested.
Here come the food police now. The wheels of justice, on time again.
No!
Are you Phineas Sharp?
Hey, you answer when a virtue keeper is asking.
Hey! Sully, he and that girl can keep each other company at the zoo.
With pleasure, Moss.
Ow! We're headed this way.
We're going to see Dad?
That's right.
Zoo?
If I catch that degenerate feline, I'll string him up and skin him. Look alive. Were you sleeping?
No, I was, saving my eyesight to be more vigilant.
It's a terrible thing to eschew one's obligations.
Yeah, you weren't issuing your elongations, were you?
I weren't eschewing no elongations or nothing, sir.
See to it that you don't. We have another deviant.
Thanks for the hand. Well, thanks for the shoulder anyway.
Together for too long. Here's the report. Hard re-education? At his age? In addition to other crimes, he insulted two highly esteemed members of the Virtue Keepers.
Who are they?
Us! You idiot.
We made it!
Davy, wait!
friend of yours? Whoa! Don't mess with him. Huh?
Welcome to Carampa's 2 Zoos. Would you like a tour?
No, we don't have time to look at the hippos, Sully.
Huh? Oh, whoa. Tour? Tour. Yeah, sure am.
Great. Right this way.
Oh, come on, Moss. Just 5 minutes.
Phew.
The animals were brought to us from all over the world. The fence keeps them safely in a place where people can study them. Can't have strange animals wandering around and harming society, you know?
Wow. It must have cost you a fortune to bring animals from all over the world and take care of them.
I didn't pay for it myself. Everyone on Carampa pays the zoo's taxes.
Zoos?
You've got the animal zoo, and over there, you've got the people zoo.
I'd love a tour, but please excuse me for just a moment.
Look at me, Shotzi. What's wrong?
No touching!
Dad? Are you okay?
I'll be all right, Davy.
Davy, why don't you go to the animal zoo so Mom and Dad can talk?
But I...
Do as I say.
I bet there's some dogs like him in the zoo somewhere.
Yeah?
They've got animals from all over.
Okay, Dad. I'll be right back.
Huh. You call this ham?
I think they call it breakfast, lunch, and dinner, old man. 1, 2... Oh. 5, 6...
What are you doing?
Not eating this, I'll tell you that. 17, 18, 19...
Huh? Davy, stay here for a minute.
Sure.
Oh, Phineas.
You know this guy?
He's all right.
Nice to meet you. I'm...
Hey, 6 feet back.
Huh?
Oh, great. He brought the tour guide with him.
Jonathan's an off-islander. He got shipwrecked here on Carumpo.
Maybe he's kind of interesting after all.
Huh?
Is he yours?
He's more like a fellow traveler.
What's his name?
Not sure.
If he's your friend, then he needs a name. Okay, off-islander. I'll make you a deal. Keep that tour guide distracted, and I'll help you get back home.
Better take the deal, Sonny.
We've only got a 57-second window. 1, 2...
Don't mingle with those animals. There's a great exhibit on mice over here. Apodamus sylvaticus, known as the field mouse. Mice are born naked and blind.
10, 11, 12...
We made these mazes to study them. They're always trying to escape.
15, 16...
Now, if you'll turn your attention.
Wait! Did you say everybody in Carumpo pays the zoo tax?
Yes, some folks try to avoid their responsibilities if they have no interest in zoos. And others believe animals should be studied in their natural habitat.
26, 27...
When citizens refuse to pay the zoo tax, property tax, toll tax, or window tax, we place them safely behind bars, like these mice.
Huh?
Such strange people who don't pay their taxes can be studied and are prevented from wandering around and harming society.
35, 36, come on.
I'd slow you down. You're on your own, kid.
56, 57.
We also have a great section on wild hogs.
Are you sure you can't come?
The wagon's full. I'll make it on foot eventually. Don't worry.
Bless you. Come see us if you're in the city.
Huh? That girl was right. Somebody ought to give you a name. How about Mices, since you love eating mice so much? Well, Mices, you've been on both sides. On which side of the bars are most people doing the most harm? Huh? Doesn't even work. Huh? What the heck is a mechaneer? And who's Stulta? Help me get home. Yeah, right. What? Stulta? Think she gave me her address? Let's go!
Watched the video. Now it is time to bring up our speaker of today, and I can see on the comment section asking what the secret code for today is. Let me speak a little bit lower. The secret code is taxation. Taxation. The secret is taxation. And please do not write it on the chat box so that whoever gets to watch taxation in the comment section, and you can get from there. So I'm going to move forward and bring on our speaker, who is Mr. Benson. Experiences have strengthened his expertise in financial reporting and analysis, while also deepening his understanding of economic and business landscape. To be speaking to us about taxation and its unintended consequence. I hope we are going to be picking a lot of gets from him. Bwana Benson, hear me. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible. Confirm if I'm audible. Could confirm if I'm audible in the chat. Am I audible? Hello, am I audible? I would like someone to confirm before I can continue. Okay. Thank you. All right, so thank you very much, Atlas Network, Liberty Sparks, and Kesa for your partnership toward bringing this edition. I am happy to be part and parcel of the 4th episode, majorly revolving around the discussion of taxation and unintended consequences. And I'm hoping that you're going to have a very wonderful session in our discussion. But an overview of what we shall be presenting today, as I will be sharing my slides, will be around just getting to understand what taxation is and the lens that taxation can go on a national and Africa level. Also getting to have a common outlook on the unintended consequences of taxation. And most of you may wonder, or as you looked forward to this session, you may have wondered, what was the origin of tax and what's the main definition of tax? Probably for those of us that have had an opportunity to pursue business-related courses, you have once come across the conversation of taxation, or even by a bigger extent read about it yourself. But majorly taxation comes in whereby in most cases the government will come in to collect tax either from individuals or corporates for the sole purpose of generating revenue or income to sustain its day-to-day activities. And we have various types of taxes that we shall be looking at today, as I'll be sharing my slides, and having a conversation around what happens after the governments have collected the taxes. And around the unintended consequences, we're going to look at both sides of the coin, both the positive and the negatives. Some of the conversations we'll be talking around unintended consequences will be economic behavioral changes, whereby taxation can influence how individuals or businesses' behaviors change. You're also going to be looking at distortion of markets, digging deep into how taxes can lead to either efficiencies or inefficiencies. For example, when you have high taxes imposed on corporates, we end up discouraging investments as countries. Also, we'll be looking at tax evasion and avoidance as part of unintended consequences, whereby high taxes, of course, lead to evasion, and try to have a practical outlook of the same. And equally, we'll be looking at economic inequality, getting to discuss how certain taxes, more especially sales tax, can contribute to inequality in an economy, whereby they, in the long run, tend to affect specifically the value-added tax, and getting access to services and goods becomes difficult. You're also going to be looking finally under unintended consequences on the behavioral shifts, whereby mostly consumers tend to change their preference, overly influenced by taxation. And third, you're going to be looking at examples of unintended consequences with a case study of Kenya. An example would be, for example, the sugar taxes that have, for the last decade, been prevalent. The introduction of them has brought forward other alternatives, such as sugar-free alternatives, that sometimes may have unintended health consequences. And finally, on corporate taxes, whereby we have, for the last year or two witnessed corporates exiting the Kenyan market, or to a wider scope, the African market, based on the heavy taxation that they face. We'll also now narrow down to potential policy solutions, because taxes are grounded on policy, and nationals or countries across have different policies, and they have jurisdiction on who comes up with these policies and the grounding to which policies are found. Recently in Kenya, we had the Financial Act 2024 that was imposed, introducing new taxes that faced a heavy outcry from the public, and which was paused for a while. And our main objective for today will be trying to find the balance between taxation and incentives, and then wrap it up by discussing the long-term impact of tax effects and how the policies can shape individuals or corporates. So if you'll allow me, I'll share my screen at this point. Cool. At the end of this 20 or so minute session, I'm hoping that we shall be able to understand what tax is about, understand the unintended consequences of tax, as well as understand the impact that tax has on an individual, on a nation, and from a nation perspective, the overall economic outlook. So this is a very interesting conversation. And from the just watched episode, I think my most catching part was whereby the government comes in and burns down an entire shamba that the people have labored so hard to have it sustain them. And this very clip introduces the aspect of taxation. Previously, as of the origins of tax, the pharaohs used to collect taxes from harvests and land. And then later the British income tax was introduced, that has since been borrowed by many African and global countries. So taxation is something that has been there since time immemorial when we had barter trade. It's only that it has now evolved to a more monetary perspective, and we foresee it evolving to a more non-monetary perspective, where we shall be discussing mostly in the aspect of cryptocurrency. So we have by now unfolded taxation and its unintended consequences, and try to understand tax. I think one of the topics that most of us have covered, those of us that have been privileged to undertake business courses, is the unit on public finance and taxation. And in this unit, you get to understand the theoretical aspect of tax and the calculation aspect of tax on an individual and on corporates. These are the main taxes that the government tends to generate. The role that tax plays in an economy is quite critical. When the government comes in and collects taxes, the intention is to be able to collect revenue that will be able to facilitate government activities and be able to run day-to-day government events. For example, the government will come in to fund education, the government will come in to fund health. Overall, the government will come in to fund the various ministries that tend to provide services to the people. And governments seem, as of today, have more or less similar ways of operations. And this is the main role that taxation plays in economic system. Without taxation, the economy cannot thrive, given that this is the main backbone of government revenue. When someone says that the government will overly rely on agriculture to collect revenue, government solely relies on taxation to be able to fund agriculture, for example. So tax plays a significant role. And I think today's conversation is around the unintended consequences, whereby we tend to question the use of tax and the results of collected tax. Looking at the case study of Kenya, tax laws will be established majorly and passed at Parliament. And this is the mandate of members of Parliament, and they must be debated upon. And once taxes are passed, they are now likely to become a bill. And the bill can only be ascended by the president. In this case, for a tax to become law, it must have passed through these initial stages. It simply means that the government has the sole responsibility of implementing policies around tax. And if, as of the recent case of Kenya, whereby allow me frequently reference the Finance Bill 2024 that faced a heavy outcry from the public, it had solely been passed and almost being ascended by the president, because mostly the taxes around the finance bill will mostly come alongside the national budget that is read out every other financial year. So for that specific case, there was public outcry because the public, for once in a very long time, were able to scrutinize the various taxes that were imposed in that bill and the heavy consequences that they would have. If you'd allow me, let me just help us calculate taxation so that you can see the impact of taxation from an individual income perspective and how much that means. Yeah. So previously, I was overly exposed to tax on a theoretical perspective, but when I started my work as an audit associate, I got to see how much it means to be able to pay tax. So in this calculator, we are going to be calculating tax from an individual's perspective. If you've interacted with financial statements, organizations will often have profit before tax, and then below the financial statements under the profit and loss accounts, there's a profit after tax. And from an individual perspective, for those of us who are privileged to be working by now, you will be able to see that there's the gross income that you earn and the respective taxes that cut from your gross income to be able to get a net salary. So I want us to do an up-to-date calculation of what it means by tax deduction at an individual level, and then we can look at a corporate level. So say for example, someone is earning 500,000 per month, and the same person has non-cash benefits. Say same person has a house allowance of 100,000, and the same person is making a pension contribution of 4,500. And then let's say he has other allowable deductions of 50,000. So this person, if you have to calculate the tax that they pay in a month, so for the case of Kenya, this person will be taking home a net pay of a negative. Yeah, that's how impactful taxation can be. For the case of Uganda, sorry, I think my application is not. Let's see. Cannot directly shift, but I was trying to just show us on how much tax plays at an individual level. If you had to remove the non-cash benefits, so comes at 0. Yeah, so looking around this, I would encourage us to play around with the RN calculator. But on average, someone earning 100K in Kenya today will take home around 60,000 at the end of the month. That means that they have given up tax up to around 40,000. A major part of it being payee, which accumulates to 30% of the gross income. So that's how much tax means to an individual. And now to a corporate level, it gets even worse. As an audit associate, part of what I interact with more, or part of the things that we review from our clients is the statutory returns. So statutory returns is where you look at the company's obligation to paying taxes, which may include income taxes, payee, NSSF, all types of taxes. And the employer will mostly match up most of the taxes for their employee, which means when the taxes rise, it becomes difficult for the employer to sustain the employee. And overly, like has been witnessed in the recent year, most companies will tend to reduce or retrench their staff members, and some of them even exiting the market because of the high rate that is required of them to sustain their employees. So that is how much significant taxation can be, and that is why the government is called upon to utilize tax in the best way possible. And so I want us to link the topic of taxation to AFCFTA, and have an overall outlook of how taxation in Kenya and taxation in Tanzania, taxation in Nigeria should narrow down to a common objective. I think the main thing that we're going to be discussing around this is the free movement of trade, because these countries will tend to trade together. Country A will depend on country B for good X, and then country B will depend on country A for good Y. And so that is where the aspect of African continental free trade comes in. And so this simply means that if Kenya and Tanzania are to come to trade, they must agree to tax policies that align with the objective of the taxation. Otherwise, there's going to be imposed barriers that will hinder this free trade. And countries will mostly opt for other solutions. Sadly, for today, most countries have opted to do trade with first world countries for the sole effect that they get to benefit from grants. When the tax policies are not well outlined at an African perspective, they tend to affect the cross-border trade. From a more practical perspective, the main barriers would be complex tax policies, as we've discussed, and majorly conflicting opinions, whereby country A tax policies will not overly favor country B's tax policies. And both countries are looking to cutting a balance to benefit from the trade. So to achieve free trade, both countries have to come to a balance, so that we do not have barriers that is limiting that trade. So by now we have discussed traditional tax system and how it originated, starting on earlier with taxation of land and harvests, and how it has over time evolved to income. We have discussed how taxation is done at an individual level by recalculating an example of an earning for one individual, and you have estimated that an individual today in Kenya earning 100,000 will take home approximately 60,000, 40,000 going to tax, a bigger chunk of 40,000 being pay as you earn tax. We've also looked at corporate tax with a major look at statutory returns that are filed by the employer that are actually obliged. The employer in Kenya will file the returns to Kenya Revenue Authority, and the individual as well will file returns to Kenya Revenue Authority. At the end of the financial year, depending on when someone initiated their KRA, they have to file returns. And in most cases, the employer will play part in you filing your returns as an employee. Nonetheless, there's a third class that we have not discussed, and this is the class that is not employed and it's not a corporate. And this is the unemployed person who makes the biggest percentage in the economy. The biggest percentage in Kenya, for example, of the youth are unemployed, and most of them are the stage of which they deserve to be employed. But do they pay tax? That's the big question. Yeah, they do pay tax. A bigger chunk of tax that the unemployed people pay is called the value added tax, whereby tax is imposed on goods and services. And as we started this conversation, we talked about the sales returns tax, whereby the aspect of inequality is introduced, in that as an individual, you are unable to get access to equal services and goods due to taxation, in this case, value added taxation that affects your day-to-day activities. So at the end of the day, no one can evade tax. Tax is part of the system, and the main question we are trying to look at is the use of the collected tax. So post the current, we now have the emerging question of crypto. And if we've been keen enough for Kenya, for example, the country is trying to impose tax on crypto. And they tried this by trying to tax the content creators. but this did not work. But this is a question that is in talks today, and it is something that could generate a lot of revenue for the country, because the government is always looking for opportunities to increase tax. So in that regard, maybe part of today's assignment, as will be posed to us, is for us to go on and look at ways in which the government could actually come in to tax crypto, and of course this will increase the tax collection levels for different governments. But at the end of the day, the use of taxation narrows down to the respective individuals who are responsible for collection of tax and the utilization of it. A question I found myself asking is how can African governments balance tax policies and economic growth? I think FTA being the main conversation of our today's topic is thinking of an Africa where we integrate our tax policies to favor our own trade, introducing a free trade within Africa that accommodates country A and country B doing business together, and not overly relying on first world countries for sustenance, because Africa alone collects a lot of taxes that, once well managed, would be able to facilitate day-to-day African activities. So that's a question I found myself questioning and thinking around. Also, the unintended consequences that we have observed in our local economies. For example, today, the government collects a bigger chunk of taxes from the most introduced tax of SHIF. SHIF is a tax collection for health that came in to replace NHIF. Previously, used to pay NHIF at a rate of 200, depending on the amount, regardless of the amount that one was earning. But as of today, SHIF is now a percentage of how much someone earns. So this means that the government is able to collect more and more revenue. Someone earning, just check the current percentage of SHIF in Kenya, but should be around 2.75. Yeah, we are 2.75. So this means that in Kenya today, someone earning an amount of maybe 500,000 will pay approximately 1.375. That's maths correct? No, percent. Yeah. So someone earning around 500,000 in Kenya today will pay SHIF amount of 13,750. But has that changed the current state in terms of the social health insurance that the government is trying to achieve? Today, hospitals, in my opinion, have become more expensive. They're not accessible. And the person who is earning 500,000 in Kenya today, of course, is under an insurance cover that caters for his health expenses and that of his immediate family. So typically, this person should not be charged this amount of money. So initially, before the introduction of SHIF, someone earning 500,000 only used to pay 200 shillings. So you would expect that the government is collecting a lot of revenue. The government of Kenya is collecting a lot of revenue from this just one single stream income of tax. But has that brought more hospitals in Kenya? Rarely. has that seen people access free healthcare? Not the case. So majorly bringing in the question of accountability with today's tax collection. So that's the main question or challenge that we face as Africa today. Yes, we do collect a lot of taxes that are able to sustain governments, but the question of accountability has become a major threat to the people. And it has now introduced the aspect of unintended consequences. Worst of all, the loss of values and honesty among the people. So it has introduced high tax evasion rates, whereby people are no longer filing tax as appropriate. It's very easy to outshine the system if you understand its objective and you're not directly benefiting from it. And so the unintended consequences as of today now become so rampant that Kenyans, being I'm a Kenyan, they are no longer willing to entertain the same government. So it's glad and I'm happy that people are awake, and sessions like this are able to alert the people that you really need to hold our leaders accountable. You really need to hold the conversation around taxation to heart, because it affects your daily living and it's a heavy collection that could turn around the entire nation if well and properly managed. So I hope that we continue this dialogue of taxation and a conversation around the economic freedom of Africa. And this is something achievable. And if you'll allow me, I'll end it at that. And thank you very much, Liberty Sparks, for the opportunity to be part of this wonderful session. Any questions from anyone? I would love to respond to questions. Let me see if you have questions in the chat. Okay. I see Joseph Wanyonyi gave a comment from the discussion, which is what we discussed. So I agree with you, Joseph. The main problem you have as a country is the expenditure of the collected taxes, because majorly the essence of collecting revenue is to narrow down this revenue to supporting various ministries, to providing services and goods to the public. Always on the other end, I think I'm done with my presentation. I'm probably taking up from here. Please, thank you.
need your response. Just give me a moment while it loads on my end. So guys, I'm glad you guys had a wonderful session. There's one question that I'd love to ask. I can't really get the name well, but he asks, or she asks, or they ask, will the government achieve to put the crypto market under taxation? For example, we have the BTC, or the Bitcoin currency, which people can transact without a third party, which acts as the regulatory hand. How will taxes work?
Then to respond to that question, by now it has proven to be challenging for the government to create systems that can help in collecting taxes related to crypto. But it's something that most governments are working around. But as of today, it's something that has been so challenging. And of course, you would interest the government to find a way around collection of crypto taxation. Not unless they were able to witness the use of that very tax. But in response to that question, we do not have a way in which the government can be able to detect and collect taxes from income and from crypto. Yeah, but probably the main goal is to come up with a system that can track down digital currencies, and probably now someone would have to, if the Central Bank of Kenya has access to digital currency transactions, which I think was imposed in one of the countries, then you'd have to be able to initiate correspondences with, for example, the central bank of your country as proof of where the income is coming from. But as Kenya, we had to get there, or as Africa, we had to get there. But I think the main initiative would be to come up with a system whereby the central bank is able to monitor every single digital transaction, either from diaspora or within. And from that, they will be able to initiate a correspondence with the individual, whereby the individual has to account on the sources of income, and where applicable, tax is imposed on them based on what the source of income is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. The second question is from Nathan Kipchumba, and he asks, how can taxation help in addressing the issue of inequalities in the Kenyan economy?
Inequality in the Kenyan economy, first of all, comes, as far as tax is concerned, comes up majorly with services and goods provided. To fight inequality, one, the government must make sure that taxes collected goes towards improving the services for the public. For example, if the government is collecting taxes and directs these taxes towards the main backgrounds of an economy, one of them being education, building schools, people are able to get free education, as was for the case during the Kibaki government. Two, channeling revenue collected to agriculture, whereby farmers can get subsidized fertilizers, boosting produce that sustains 70% of Kenyan economy. And three, services such as inequality, whereby for the case of, for example, Northeastern Kenya, the government to channel funds towards, for example, the Ministry of Interior, and people in the Northeastern would not face insecurity issues. So looking at those three things, people would face the equality of education, access to food, and access to security. And I think the best way to look at it is diversifying money into the ministries, which I think happens, but the accountability of it is what we does not see. And then that was from a services perspective. from a goods perspective, it's now a question of sales. And when you look at sales, I think the main concentration here would be on industries, whereby if industries, let's take a look, for example, at a producing industry like BAT. BAT is a renowned, a global industry that produces tobacco. And if BAT is overly taxed by the government, it could, one, easily exit Kenya. It will, two, easily increase the cost of goods that it produces, making it difficult for people to buy them. And then three, this will mean that it will have a low profit after tax, which means that they're going to retrench or maybe fire people, or maybe have to return some people from working with them, given this constraint. And in this case, we will not be achieving equality. So let's look at equality from a perspective of services offered by the government and how the government influences goods and services, especially I think BAT will not be a good example given it produces tobacco and not most people consume tobacco. But just looking at a company like Jogo, Amaze, Mumias, Mumias actually being a PPP, being a PPP company, and majorly equality can only be achieved if goods and services are at the center of the taxation policy.
Maybe just mention what he says. And he says tax is collected, but there is spending it, which is the biggest problem, because most of these funds are channeled to different expenses which really don't benefit, which really just benefit a few majority. Is it something that you'd want to maybe expound on, just to make it clear?
Okay, so from our conversation today, we looked at how tax is collected, and we did a calculation of collecting tax from an individual, whereby we estimated that an individual earning 100,000 in Kenya today will take home approximately 60,000. A bigger chunk of it going to taxation. Taxation in this case for individuals being payee, other statutory deductions like NSSF, NHIF, health deductions for those applicable in Kenya, among others. For corporates or organizations, they'll come in to match up these costs. So the Kenya Revenue Authority, Kenyan case study, assuming that this call has people out of Kenya, will have come up with structures in place to see to it that that corporates match up the cost of sustaining one employer. So governments will collect taxes as well from the corporate. So the corporate will come in to pay equal NSF amounts, will come in to pay SHIF amounts. And recently actually witnessed like a client an organization will pay as much as 30 million on SHIF in the current with the current tax SHIF policy. And thirdly is the third person is not employed and they're not corporate, whereby they are imposed daily tax by excess of goods and services, mostly through VAT and charges that come from accessing different services. For example, a truck driver ferrying goods from Embu to Nairobi will meet a toll station in between where they'll have to pay tax to the county government. So tax will be collected at county and national governments. And this, looking at it from a wide perspective, is a lot of revenue that is able to sustain an economy if well managed. And now answering to the question, the main concern that the tax bearers will have is that they do not see the fruits of this tax collection. So, say for example, we did a calculation of someone paying earning 500,000 in a month will pay a shift of around 13,000 a month. So it simply means that this person should be able to get free access to health at whatever time. But this is not the case today. So the point of unintended consequences now in this regard is inefficiency. So the government is not efficient with allocating of taxes and allocating of how this revenue is spent by the various ministries or delegates at either county or national level.
Is it a must that we have an renovation of government buildings, more specifically state houses and state lodges? Because ideally most of these renovations, they get to use taxpayers' money and all.
I think for me, that would be necessary, but not annually. I think majorly what should guide an economic's expenditure is the budget. So starting from the economic of treasury and planning, once they are allocating the budget, they will allocate a budget for refurbishments, for example. And in most cases, if you are to dig down, what happens is that a budget expenditures with the government will surpass the budget that was set. And even worse, for some, expenditure are incurred for something that was not budgeted at all. So I think given that the Ministry of Economic Planning and Treasury rolls the budget annually, I think it is up to them to see that first they come up with a budget that is more realistic and efficient with the resources that are available at the time, and seeing to it that that budget is well monitored and adhered to, and anything out of that budget is not brought into the light of expenditure. Yeah. So I think to answer that question, the best approach will be a budget perspective, whereby anything out of the budget, including now in this case, we are talking about the innovations. If they are not part of the budget, they should not come up. But again, you need a very transparent Ministry of Economic Planning and Treasury.
The last question is from R. Mutune, and is the problem in Kenya really high taxation, or is it just failed systems?
Recently, we have a problem of high taxation, honestly, because which is affecting the common mwananchi drastically, whereby you're working, but it has now become a case that you're working for the government. Because I would like to use the case of someone earning 100K, which is probably the market entry rate for a person into the market, and they'll take home around 60K. And ideally, this person has not actually surpassed all other needs that are set out to them. So at the end of the day, minus now the personal deductions, we have minus the government deduction, minus the personal deductions, including the most necessities of food, rent. This person will end up taking home around 10,000. Yeah. This 10,000 is not able to sustain the individual, making the individual prone to systems that do not favor them, majorly because there is need for money. And that is what has brainwashed most people. So you end up working and working because you need money, but it's not because you are actually getting value from that money, but it's from a sustenance perspective. So first, I would say that we are facing a big problem of overtaxation and a big problem of lack of accountability by the government. So I would say that I would say that the government is should bring in a system that is favorable. Whereby we have a balance between tax and the output. I don't know if I've answered the question.
Much,
I hope I've answered the question.
Yes, thank you so much for giving us your time today on a weekend, and so much for the nuggets you've shared. I believe everyone that is live with us has, picked quite a number, and those who later will do the same. For everyone who's joined, thank you so much. If you didn't get to hear the secret code for today, I'll repeat, it is taxation. I'll leave a couple of minutes, so rush to and get to and mark yourself present today. Thank you for spending a couple of your minutes with us this Friday. See you in the next session. Asante.
Thank you.